Picture, if you will, the golden sands of the Sahara Desert meeting the life-giving waters of the Nile River. This is where our story unfolds, in a land where the predictable rhythm of seasonal floods created not just agricultural abundance, but the very foundation of a civilization that would endure for over 30 centuries. The ancient Egyptians called their homeland Kemet, meaning the Black Land, referring to the rich, dark soil left behind by the Nile's annual inundation. As you close your eyes and let your breathing slow, imagine standing on the east bank of the Nile at dawn. The sun rises in splendor over the river's surface, casting golden reflections that dance and shimmer across the water. This daily resurrection of the sun, god Ra, was central to Egyptian belief, symbolizing the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that permeated every aspect of their culture. The pharaohs, those divine rulers we will encounter in our journey tonight, saw themselves as earthly embodiments of this cosmic order. The story of Egypt's pharaohs begins not with grand monuments or golden treasures, but with the practical necessity of uniting a scattered people along the world's longest river. Around 3100 BCE, a ruler named Narmer, also known as Menes, accomplished what had never been done before. He unified Upper and Lower Egypt under a single crown. This moment marks the beginning of pharaonic Egypt, the start of a governmental system so successful it would outlast empires and civilizations across the ancient world. In the gentle twilight of your consciousness, let us consider what made these pharaohs so extraordinary. They were not merely kings or queens in the way we understand monarchy today. To their subjects, they were living gods, intermediaries between the mortal realm and the divine cosmos. Every pharaoh was believed to be the earthly manifestation of Horus, the falcon-headed god, and upon death, they joined Osiris in the afterlife, continuing to watch over Egypt from the realm of the dead. This divine kingship created a unique responsibility. Pharaohs were expected to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. They achieved this through just rule, proper religious observances, and the construction of monuments that reflected Egypt's prosperity and divine favor. The pyramids we will explore tonight were not merely tombs, but eternal houses designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife and their continued protection of Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza, which we will visit in detail during our journey, stands as the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Built for the pharaoh Khufu around 2580 BCE, it remained the world's tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years. Yet this monument represents just one chapter in our story, a story that spans the rise and fall of dynasties, the golden age of the New Kingdom, and the eventual integration of Egypt into the broader ancient world. As we drift through the centuries together tonight, you will meet pharaohs whose names echo through history. Hatshepsut, the woman who ruled as king. Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who challenged the gods themselves. Tutankhamun, the boy king whose tomb revealed treasures beyond imagination. And Ramses the Great, whose monuments still inspire awe along the Nile. Each of these rulers faced unique challenges and left distinctive marks upon the long scroll of Egyptian history. The pyramids that punctuate our landscape tonight tell their own stories, of architectural innovation, of religious devotion, and of the incredible organizational capacity of ancient Egyptian society. From the step pyramid of Djoser, humanity's first monumental stone building, to the perfectly proportioned Great Pyramid, these structures represent humanity's eternal desire to touch the divine and achieve immortality through lasting works. Let your mind settle now as we prepare to enter the world of ancient Egypt. Feel the warmth of the desert sun tempered by the cool breeze from the Nile. Hear the distant calls of workers, the gentle lapping of water against papyrus reeds, and the quiet whisper of sand shifting in the eternal wind. Tonight, we walk in the footsteps of gods and kings, exploring a civilization that achieved immortality not just in their beliefs about the afterlife, but in the enduring power of their monuments and the timeless fascination they hold for us today. As we drift deeper into the mists of time, we arrive at the very beginning of Pharaonic Egypt, in an era when the concept of divine kingship first took root along the fertile banks of the Nile. The year is approximately 3100 BCE, and we witness one of history's most significant political achievements, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under the rule of a single pharaoh. Picture the ancient landscape before unification. Dozens of small communities, called nomes, scattered along the river like precious gems on a golden thread. Each had its own local deity, its own customs, and its own ruler. Upper Egypt, stretching south from modern-day Cairo to Aswan, was characterized by narrow valley agriculture and closer contact with Nubia and Africa. Lower Egypt, encompassing the broad delta region where the Nile spreads into multiple branches before meeting the Mediterranean, was more cosmopolitan, with greater exposure to trade with the Levant and the broader Mediterranean world. The figure who changed this fragmented landscape forever was Narmer, whose name means the fierce catfish. Archaeological evidence, particularly the famous Narmer palette discovered at Hierakonpolis, shows us a ruler who conquered through both military might and religious authority. On one side of this ceremonial palette, we see Narmer wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, striking down an enemy. On the reverse, he wears the red crown of Lower Egypt, reviewing the decapitated bodies of his foes. This powerful artifact tells us that unification was not merely political. It was a cosmic event that required the pharaoh to master both the symbolic and the practical aspects of rule. As the centuries flow by like the gentle current of the Nile, we enter what historians call the early dynastic period. Here, in the soft twilight of early civilization, the fundamental concepts of pharaonic rule crystallize. The pharaoh becomes not just a king, but a god-king, the earthly embodiment of divine will. This transformation was revolutionary. While other ancient cultures had kings who claimed divine favor, Egypt created rulers who were themselves divine. The capital of this newly unified Egypt was established at Memphis, strategically located at the point where Upper and Lower Egypt meet. From this administrative center, the early pharaohs began the monumental task of creating a unified culture, legal system, and religious framework that could bind together the diverse peoples of the Nile Valley. They developed hieroglyphic writing, not just as a tool of administration, but as a sacred script believed to carry divine power in its very forms. Now, as we settle deeper into our journey through time, we encounter the Third Dynasty and the revolutionary pharaoh Djoser, who ruled around 2670 BCE. Djoser's reign marks a crucial turning point in our story, for it is during his time that the first pyramid rises from the desert sands. But before we explore this architectural marvel, let us understand the man behind it. Djoser was served by one of history's first known architects and polymaths, a man named Imhotep. So revered was Imhotep that later generations deified him as a god of wisdom and medicine. Under Imhotep's guidance, Djoser's burial complex at Saqqara became something unprecedented, a massive stone monument designed to serve the pharaoh's needs in the afterlife while demonstrating his divine power to all who gazed upon it. The step pyramid of Djoser rises in 6 distinct tiers, reaching a height of 203 feet and representing humanity's first monumental stone building. As you visualize this ancient wonder, imagine yourself walking across the desert at dawn, watching as the stepped silhouette emerges from the morning mist. Each level of the pyramid represents a step in the pharaoh's journey to join the gods in the sky. The entire complex covers 37 acres and includes temples, courtyards, and subsidiary buildings all carved from limestone, a material chosen for its eternal qualities. The pyramid's interior reveals the sophisticated understanding ancient Egyptians had of the afterlife. Miles of tunnels and chambers wind beneath the structure, designed to confuse tomb robbers while providing the pharaoh's spirit with everything needed for eternal existence. Blue faience tiles decorate some chambers, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that suggests the pharaoh's transformation into a stellar deity. As our journey through the Old Kingdom continues, we witness the evolution of pyramid building into an art form of breathtaking precision. The Fourth Dynasty, beginning around 2613 BCE, represents the golden age of pyramid construction. It is during this period that we encounter the pharaohs whose monuments still dominate the Giza Plateau today. Sneferu, the first pharaoh of the Fourth Dynasty, was a prolific builder who experimented with pyramid design across multiple sites. His bent pyramid at Dashur tells a fascinating story of architectural problem-solving. Beginning as a steep-sided structure, structural concerns forced the builders to change the angle partway up, creating the distinctive bent appearance that gives the pyramid its name. This apparent failure actually represents a crucial learning experience that made the later achievements at Giza possible. Sneferu's Red Pyramid, also at Dashur, represents the first successful true pyramid, a smooth-sided monument that established the template for all future pyramid construction. Standing in the quiet desert evening, imagining the satisfaction of the ancient builders as they completed this perfect geometric form, we can appreciate the incredible leap in engineering sophistication that occurred during Sneferu's reign. The social organization required for these monumental projects reveals much about Old Kingdom society. Contrary to popular belief, the pyramids were not built by slave labor but by organized workforces of free citizens who served the pharaoh during the agricultural off-season. These workers were housed in temporary cities, fed from royal granaries, and provided with medical care. The logistics of feeding, housing, and organizing tens of thousands of workers represents one of humanity's first large-scale administrative achievements. Religious beliefs during the Old Kingdom centered on the pharaoh's role as the living Horus and his transformation after death into Osiris. The pyramid texts, first appearing in the Pyramid of Unas at the end of the Fifth Dynasty, provide our earliest insight into Egyptian afterlife beliefs. These spells and incantations, carved into pyramid walls, were designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey through the underworld and his rebirth as a god among the stars. As we conclude this first chapter of our journey, let your mind rest on the image of these early pyramids rising from the desert floor, their limestone surfaces gleaming in the Egyptian sun. These monuments represent more than architectural achievement. They embody humanity's first systematic attempt to build bridges between the mortal and divine realms, to create structures that could house divinity itself and ensure the continuation of cosmic order through the eternal presence of the God King. As we drift deeper into the Fourth Dynasty, around 2580 BCE, we encounter the most ambitious architectural project in human history. The reign of Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops, marks a pinnacle of ancient Egyptian achievement that has captivated humanity for over 4 millennia. Tonight, as your breathing settles into the rhythm of peaceful sleep, let us explore the creation of the Great Pyramid and meet the extraordinary individuals who brought this wonder into being. Khufu inherited a kingdom at the height of its power and prosperity. The Nile's annual floods had been generous, the royal granaries overflowed with grain, and the pharaoh's authority extended from the Mediterranean coast to the first cataract at Aswan. Gold flowed north from Nubia, cedar wood arrived from Lebanon, and exotic goods from across the ancient world found their way to Memphis. It was in this context of abundance and confidence that Khufu conceived a monument that would dwarf all previous achievements. Picture the Giza Plateau as it existed before construction began, a limestone outcrop rising from the Nile's west bank, chosen for its proximity to Memphis, yet sufficiently elevated to be visible for miles across the flat delta landscape. Here, Khufu's architects and engineers, led by his nephew Hemiunu, began surveying and planning the most precisely constructed building the ancient world would ever know. The Great Pyramids' statistics still inspire wonder today. Originally standing 481 feet tall, it contained approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons. The pyramid's base covers 13 acres, and its four sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy that would challenge modern surveyors. The entire structure was completed in approximately 20 years, requiring the quarrying, transportation, and precise placement of over 300 blocks per day. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the daily life of this incredible construction project. Each morning before dawn, thousands of workers would gather at the base of the growing pyramid. Quarrymen worked the nearby limestone deposits, their copper tools sparking against stone as they cut blocks with mathematical precision. Teams of workers hauled stones up the pyramid's sides using ramps, though the exact configuration of these ramps remains one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. The workforce represented a cross-section of Egyptian society. Skilled craftsmen cut and fitted the casing stones that gave the pyramid its smooth, gleaming surface. These outer stones, made of fine Tura limestone, were cut and polished to mirror-like perfection, causing the completed pyramid to shine like a beacon visible for miles in every direction. Sadly, most of these casing stones were removed in later periods for use in Cairo's medieval construction, but a few remain near the pyramid's base, hinting at its original magnificence. Inside the pyramid, we discover a masterpiece of engineering: sophistication. The internal chambers and passages reveal the builders' intimate understanding of structural engineering and their profound religious beliefs about the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The descending passage, cut at a precise 26-degree angle, leads to an unfinished chamber carved directly from the bedrock. Some scholars believe this chamber was abandoned when the builders decided to create additional chambers within the pyramid's masonry itself. The ascending passage, sealed after Khufu's burial by massive granite plugs, leads to two of the pyramid's most mysterious features: the Queen's Chamber and the Grand Gallery. Despite its name, the Queen's Chamber was never intended for Khufu's queen, but may have housed the pharaoh's Ka statue, a spiritual double that would serve his soul in the afterlife. The chamber's perfect proportions and the mysterious shafts extending from its walls toward the pyramid's exterior suggest profound astronomical and religious significance. The Grand Gallery represents perhaps the most breathtaking interior space ever created in an ancient monument. This corbelled passage rises at a 26-degree angle toward the king's chamber, its ceiling soaring 28 feet above a narrow walkway. The gallery's walls are constructed with such precision that a knife blade cannot be inserted between the joints. Standing in this space, even in imagination, one feels dwarfed by both its physical dimensions and the incredible skill required for its construction. Within the king's chamber lies one of archaeology's most intriguing mysteries: the red granite sarcophagus that once contained Khufu's mummy. This massive stone box, carved from a single block of Aswan granite, was positioned in the chamber before the pyramid's completion, as its dimensions are larger than the passages leading to the chamber. The sarcophagus lacks inscriptions or decoration, its stark simplicity reflecting the Old Kingdom's austere religious sensibilities. As Khufu's reign draws to a close in our journey, we witness the completion of not just a tomb, but a theological statement carved in stone. The Great Pyramid's very form embodies ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and rebirth. Its pointed apex reaches toward the imperishable stars, where the pharaoh's soul would join the gods. The pyramid's base, firmly planted on earth, ensured the pharaoh's continued connection to his earthly kingdom. Now, as we drift through time to the reign of Khafre, Khufu's successor, we encounter a pharaoh determined to match his predecessor's achievement, while creating something uniquely his own. Khufu's pyramid, built slightly southwest of the Great Pyramid around 2540 BCE, initially appears smaller, but actually rises from higher ground, creating an impressive silhouette that competes with Khufu's monument for dominance of the skyline. Khufu's pyramid retains more of its original casing stones near the summit, allowing modern visitors to glimpse how all the Giza pyramids once appeared, smooth-sided, gleaming geometric forms that seem to capture and reflect the sun's divine light. The pyramid's internal layout follows a simpler plan than Khufu's monument, with a single burial chamber carved from the bedrock beneath the structure's center. But Khufu's true masterpiece lies not in his pyramid, but in the colossal sculpture that guards the entire Giza complex, the Great Sphinx. Carved from a natural limestone outcrop, this monument combines the body of a lion with the head of a pharaoh, creating a symbol of divine kingship that has captivated imaginations for millennia. The Sphinx faces east toward the rising sun, its enigmatic expression suggesting the mysteries of divine knowledge possessed by the god-king. Recent archaeological investigations reveal that the Sphinx was originally part of Khufu's pyramid complex, connected by a causeway that ran from the pyramid to a valley temple at the monument's base. This temple, constructed from massive granite blocks, served as a place of mummification and ritual preparation for the pharaoh's funeral procession. The third pyramid at Giza belongs to Menkaure, Khufu's successor, whose reign around 2510 BCE marks the end of the Great Pyramid building age. Menkaure's monument, though significantly smaller than its neighbors, exhibits exquisite craftsmanship and represents the final evolution of Old Kingdom pyramid design. Its lower courses were originally encased in red granite, creating a striking visual contrast with the limestone superstructure. Menkaure's pyramid complex includes 3 small subsidiary pyramids, likely built for his queens, and a mortuary temple that contained some of the finest sculpture of the Old Kingdom period. The famous statue groups showing Menkaure flanked by goddesses represent the pinnacle of Egyptian artistic achievement, their serene expressions and perfect proportions embodying the divine harmony that the pharaohs sought to maintain. As we conclude this chapter, let your mind rest on the image of the 3 great pyramids rising from the Giza Plateau in their original splendor. Their gleaming white limestone surfaces reflect the desert sun, while their geometric perfection speaks to humanity's eternal desire to create monuments worthy of the divine. These structures represent more than individual achievements. They embody the collaborative effort of an entire civilization working in harmony to ensure their god-king's successful journey to immortality. In the quiet of the desert night, as stars wheel overhead in the same patterns the ancient Egyptians knew, the pyramids stand as eternal testament to the power of human ambition guided by spiritual purpose. They remind us that some achievements transcend their historical moment to become touchstones for all future generations, inspiration for humanity's continued reach toward the sublime. As we drift forward through the centuries, leaving behind the golden age of pyramid construction, we encounter a period of profound transformation in ancient Egypt. The Old Kingdom's central authority gradually weakened, and by 2181 BCE, the country fragmented into competing regional powers. This period, known as the First Intermediate Period, represents a time of political chaos, but also remarkable cultural development that would reshape Egyptian civilization. Picture the Nile Valley during these turbulent centuries. Local governors, called nomarchs, assert independence from Memphis, establishing their own dynasties and burial grounds. The great pyramid building projects cease, not from lack of ambition, but because the centralized resources required for such monuments no longer exist. Yet in this apparent decline, we discover the roots of a cultural renaissance that would define Egypt's Middle Kingdom. The reunification of Egypt around 2055 BCE came through the efforts of Mentuhotep II, a Theban prince who conquered the northern kingdoms and established the 11th dynasty. His victory marked not just a political achievement, but a fundamental shift in Egyptian civilization. Thebes, located in Upper Egypt near modern-day Luxor, became the new capital, bringing with it the worship of Amun, a local deity who would eventually merge with Ra to become Amun-Ra, king of the gods. As you settle deeper into peaceful rest, imagine the cultural flowering that accompanied this political reunion. The Middle Kingdom, spanning roughly from 2055 to 1650 BCE, represents what many scholars consider the classical period of Egyptian civilization. Literature flourished during this era, producing works like The Tale of Sinuhe and The Eloquent Peasant that reveal sophisticated understanding of human nature and social justice. The pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom faced a changed world. The absolute divine kingship of the Old Kingdom evolved into a more nuanced concept of royal responsibility. Kings were still gods, but gods who acknowledged their duty to care for their subjects and maintain justice throughout the land. This shift is beautifully captured in the Instructions for Merakare, where an aging pharaoh advises his son that more acceptable is the character of one upright of heart than the ox of the evildoer. Amenemhat I, founder of the 12th dynasty around 1991 BCE, established a new capital at Ichtawi, strategically located to control both Upper and Lower Egypt. His reign began a period of remarkable prosperity and cultural achievement that would last for over 2 centuries. Amenemhat's pyramid at Lisht, though modest compared to the Giza monuments, represents a conscious revival of Old Kingdom architectural traditions while incorporating innovations that reflected changing royal ideology. The most fascinating pharaoh of this period may be Amenemhat III, who ruled from approximately 1860 to 1814 BCE. His reign represents the pinnacle of Middle Kingdom achievement, marked by massive irrigation projects that expanded Egypt's agricultural capacity and extensive mining operations that brought unprecedented wealth to the kingdom. Amenemhat III's pyramid complex at Hawara included what ancient historians called the Labyrinth, a mortuary temple so complex that visitors described it as more wonderful than the pyramids themselves. As we continue our gentle journey through time, we encounter one of ancient Egypt's most remarkable rulers, Sobekneferu, who became pharaoh around 1806 BCE. She was one of the first women to rule Egypt in her own right, taking the full regalia and titles of kingship, rather than serving as a regent for a male heir. Sobekneferu's brief reign marks the end of the 12th dynasty and foreshadows the more famous female pharaohs who would follow in later periods. The Middle Kingdom also witnessed significant developments in religious thought and practice. The democratization of the afterlife, which had begun in the late Old Kingdom, reached full flower during this period. No longer was eternal life the exclusive privilege of the pharaoh. Ordinary Egyptians could now aspire to join Osiris in the underworld if they lived righteously and could afford proper mummification and burial equipment. This religious transformation is beautifully illustrated in the coffin texts, spells and incantations painted on wooden coffins that served as affordable alternatives to the expensive stone sarcophagi of earlier periods. These texts, derived from the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom, made the pharaoh's magical protection available to anyone who could commission their inclusion in their burial equipment. The art of the Middle Kingdom reflects this more personal and accessible approach to the divine. Royal sculpture, while maintaining its traditional dignity, shows more individualized features and emotional depth. The famous Sphinx of Amenemhat III at Tanis, with its deeply lined face and world-weary expression, seems to embody the weight of kingship and the pharaoh's responsibility for his people's welfare. Provincial workshops flourished during this period, creating distinctive regional styles that enriched Egypt's artistic vocabulary. The tombs at Beni Hassan, carved into cliffs overlooking the Nile in Middle Egypt, preserve some of the period's most vivid paintings. These images of daily life, craftsmen at work, wrestlers competing, birds and animals in naturalistic settings, reveal a society confident in its prosperity and secure in its cultural identity. The Middle Kingdom's military achievements extended Egyptian influence far beyond the Nile Valley. Pharaohs of the 12th dynasty conquered Nubia, establishing fortresses along the Second Cataract that controlled the gold trade and projected Egyptian power deep into Africa. These massive mud brick fortifications, with names like Buhan and Semna, represent sophisticated military engineering that protected Egypt's southern frontier for centuries. Trade relationships during this period extended to the Levant, Anatolia, and the Aegean world. Egyptian objects found in Minoan palaces on Crete and Mesopotamian texts mentioning Egyptian goods testify to the kingdom's international connections. This cosmopolitan outlook influenced Egyptian culture, introducing new artistic motifs and technological innovations while strengthening Egypt's economy through diversified trade relationships. The Middle Kingdom's approach to pyramid building reveals both continuity with the past and adaptation to new circumstances. While pharaohs continued to build pyramids as symbols of their divinity, these monuments were constructed using mud brick cores faced with limestone rather than the solid stone construction of the Old Kingdom. This innovation reduced costs while maintaining the symbolic importance of the pyramid form. Senusret II's pyramid at Laocoon incorporates sophisticated drainage systems and internal security measures that reflect the builder's awareness of tomb robbery threats. The nearby town of Laocoon, built to house the pyramid's priests and workers, provides remarkable insights into Middle Kingdom urban planning and social organization. Papyrus documents from this site reveal details about household management, religious festivals, and economic relationships that bring the ancient world to vivid life. As the Middle Kingdom draws to a close in our journey, around 1650 BCE, we witness the gradual erosion of central authority that would lead to the Second Intermediate Period. This transition was hastened by the arrival of the Hyksos, Asiatic peoples who established kingdoms in the Nile Delta, while Egyptian dynasties continued to rule from Thebes in the south. Yet the Middle Kingdom's legacy extends far beyond its political achievements. This period established many of the cultural and religious patterns that would define Egyptian civilization for the remainder of its ancient history. The concept of divine kingship, balanced by royal responsibility, the democratization of afterlife beliefs, and the integration of regional traditions into a unified national culture all emerged from Middle Kingdom innovations. As we prepare to transition into our next chapter, let your mind rest on the image of Middle Kingdom Egypt at its height, a prosperous, confident civilization that had learned from past glories while creating new forms of cultural expression. The pharaohs of this era may not have built monuments as massive as the Great Pyramid, but they created something perhaps more enduring, a cultural synthesis that would inspire and guide their successors through the challenges and triumphs of the new kingdom that awaited them. As we emerge from the political fragmentation of the Second Intermediate Period, we enter what historians consider the most glorious chapter in ancient Egyptian history. Around 1550 BCE, the princes of Thebes successfully expelled the Hyksos rulers from northern Egypt and established the 18th dynasty, inaugurating the New Kingdom period that would transform Egypt from an isolated Nile Valley kingdom into the ancient world's first great empire. The pharaoh who accomplished this remarkable feat was Ahmose I, whose name means born of the moon. As you settle deeper into rest, picture the young Theban prince leading his armies north toward the Hyksos capital of Avaris in the delta. The weapons and tactics his enemies had used to conquer Egypt, horse-drawn chariots, composite bows, and bronze weapons, now served the cause of Egyptian liberation. Ahmose's victory represented more than military triumph. It marked Egypt's emergence as an international power that would dominate the ancient Near East for the next 5 centuries. The New Kingdom pharaohs ruled an empire that stretched from Nubia in the south to the Euphrates River in the north. Gold from Nubian mines, tribute from Syrian city-states, and trade goods from across the ancient world flowed into Egypt, creating unprecedented wealth and artistic sophistication. The pharaohs of this era were not merely rulers of Egypt, but emperors who commanded respect from the great powers of their time, Assyria, Babylon, and the Hittite Empire. This imperial expansion coincided with a revolution in royal ideology. New Kingdom pharaohs presented themselves not just as gods, but as divine warriors chosen by Amun-Ra to extend Egyptian dominion over all lands touched by the sun. This martial aspect of kingship found expression in magnificent temple complexes at Karnak and Luxor, where colossal statues and relief carvings celebrate royal victories and divine favor. As we drift through the early New Kingdom, we encounter one of history's most fascinating rulers, Hatshepsut, whose reign from approximately 1479 to 1458 BCE challenged every convention of pharaonic rule. Born a royal daughter, married to Thutmose II, and appointed regent for the young Thutmose III, Hatshepsut gradually assumed the full prerogatives of kingship, including the traditional pharaonic regalia of crook, flail, and false beard. Picture Hatshepsut as she appeared in official representations, a woman's body clothed in the traditional pharaonic regalia, the sacred uraeus serpent adorning her brow, and the false beard of divinity attached to her chin. These images, carved in temples throughout Egypt, represent one of history's most successful gender transformations. Hatshepsut ruled Egypt for nearly 2 decades, during which the kingdom prospered through trade rather than conquest. Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, nestled against the cliffs on the west bank of the Nile near Thebes, represents one of ancient Egypt's most innovative architectural achievements. The temple's terraced design follows the natural contours of the cliff face, creating a harmonious integration of human creation and divine landscape. Colonnaded porticos carved into the living rock house, magnificent reliefs depicting Hatshepsut's divine birth and her famous trading expedition to the mysterious land of Punt. The Punt expedition, recorded in detailed reliefs at Deir el-Bahri, reveals the New Kingdom's international scope and commercial sophistication. Hatshepsut's envoys traveled south along the Red Sea coast to a land identified with modern Somalia or Eritrea, returning with exotic goods, gold, ebony, ivory, incense, and live frankincense trees that were transplanted to Egyptian gardens. These expeditions demonstrate that New Kingdom Egypt engaged the ancient world through commerce as well as conquest. As we continue through the 18th dynasty, we encounter the great conqueror Thutmose III, whose military campaigns extended Egyptian control deeper into Asia than any previous pharaoh had achieved. His victory at the Battle of Megiddo around 1457 BCE established Egyptian dominance over the Levant and provided the template for imperial administration that would characterize Egyptian foreign policy for centuries. Thutmose III's annals, carved on the walls of Karnak Temple, provide detailed accounts of his military campaigns and their enormous profits. Syrian city-states paid tribute in gold, silver, lapis lazuli, and exotic manufactured goods, while Nubian provinces supplied gold, ivory, ebony, and wild animals for the pharaoh's menageries. This wealth funded unprecedented temple construction projects and supported the artistic flowering that made the New Kingdom Egypt's cultural pinnacle. The reign of Amenhotep III, from approximately 1391 to 1353 BCE, represents the New Kingdom at its most prosperous and cosmopolitan. His correspondence, preserved in the Amarna letters, reveals a world where Egyptian pharaohs exchanged gifts and diplomatic marriages with rulers from across the ancient Near East. Amenhotep, the third's palace at Malkata, on the west bank near Thebes, covered over 30 hectares and included artificial lakes, gardens, and pavilions that hosted international diplomatic gatherings. During Amenhotep III's reign, Egyptian art reached new heights of sophistication and refinement. The colossal statues that flanked his mortuary temple, known today as the Colossi of Memnon, stood over 60 feet tall and could be seen from across the Nile Valley. These monuments, carved from single blocks of quartzite sandstone, demonstrated both the pharaoh's divine power and Egypt's technological mastery. As our journey continues, we approach one of ancient history's most controversial figures, Akhenaten, whose reign from approximately 1353 to 1336 BCE challenged the very foundations of Egyptian civilization. Born Amenhotep IV, this pharaoh abandoned the traditional pantheon of Egyptian gods in favor of a single deity, the Aten, represented as a sun disk, whose rays ended in hands offering life to the royal family. Picture the revolutionary capital Akhenaten, built at Tel El Amarna, situated on a virgin site in Middle Egypt, where no previous gods had been worshipped. This city, called Akhetaten or Horizon of the Aten, featured temples open to the sky rather than the dark, mysterious sanctuaries traditional in Egyptian religion. Massive courtyards filled with offering tables replaced the hidden shrines where priests had served the gods since time immemorial. Akhenaten's religious revolution extended to art and culture, creating what scholars call the Amarna style. Royal representations abandoned the idealized perfection of traditional pharaonic art in favor of startling realism that emphasized the king's unusual physical features: elongated skull, narrow face, prominent belly, and wide hips. These images, whether intended as realistic portraiture or symbolic representation, created a new visual vocabulary for expressing divine kingship. The famous bust of Nefertiti, Akhenaten's queen, exemplifies Amarna period artistry at its finest. Discovered in the workshop of the royal sculptor Thutmose at Amarna, this limestone portrait captures both individual personality and idealized beauty, creating an image of queenly dignity that continues to inspire artists and art lovers today. Nefertiti's role in Akhenaten's revolution appears to have been substantial, as she is depicted participating in religious ceremonies traditionally reserved for pharaohs alone. Akhenaten's revolution ultimately failed to survive his death. His successor, the young Tutankhamun, whose reign from approximately 1332 to 1323 BCE restored the traditional gods and moved the capital back to Memphis. The boy pharaoh, who ascended the throne at age 9, became history's most famous Egyptian ruler, not through his lifetime achievements, but through the incredible preservation of his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 revealed treasures that had remained untouched for over 3 millennia. The golden funeral mask, with its serene expression and divine regalia, became the iconic image of pharaonic majesty. Yet beyond its material splendor, the tomb provides unprecedented insight into new kingdom burial practices and beliefs about the afterlife. The tomb's 4 nested shrines, 3 anthropoid coffins, and countless grave goods create a complete picture of royal funerary arrangements. Tutankhamun's mummy, wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen and adorned with golden amulets, was placed within coffins of gilded wood and solid gold that weighed over 240 pounds. This elaborate preparation reflects the new kingdom's sophisticated understanding of mummification and the journey through the afterlife. As we move deeper into the new kingdom, we encounter the greatest of all pharaohs, Ramses II, known to history as Ramses the Great. His 66-year reign, from 1279 to 1213 BCE, represents the pinnacle of pharaonic power and the last great flowering of ancient Egyptian civilization. Ramesses ruled longer than any pharaoh except Pepi II of the Old Kingdom, and his monuments still dominate the Egyptian landscape today. Picture Ramesses in his prime, a tall, red-haired pharaoh whose mummy reveals a man of imposing physical presence. His reign began with military campaigns against the Hittites that culminated in the famous Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BCE. Though neither side achieved decisive victory, Ramesses transformed this stalemate into a propaganda triumph, commissioning temple reliefs and epic poems that celebrated his personal heroism and divine protection. The peace treaty Ramesses eventually signed with the Hittites represents one of history's first recorded international agreements. This diplomatic achievement ushered in an era of prosperity that allowed Ramesses to undertake the most ambitious building program since the Pyramid Age. His monuments, Abu Simbel, Karnak's Hypostyle Hall, the Ramesseum, and Pi-Ramesses, demonstrate both Egypt's wealth and the pharaoh's determination to ensure his eternal remembrance. Abu Simbel, carved into the cliffs above the Nile in Nubia, represents the apotheosis of pharaonic self-glorification. 4 colossal seated statues of Ramesses, each 65 feet tall, guard the temple entrance while smaller figures of royal family members stand between the pharaoh's legs, emphasizing their subordinate status. The temple's interior chambers lead to a sanctuary where statues of Ramesses sit alongside the gods, Ptah, Amun-Ra, and Ra-Harakti, asserting the pharaoh's divine equality with Egypt's greatest deities. The smaller temple at Abu Simbel, dedicated to Ramesses' beloved queen Nefertari and the goddess Hathor, breaks with tradition by depicting the queen at the same scale as the pharaoh on the temple facade. This unprecedented honor reflects both Ramesses' affection for Nefertari and the elevated status royal women achieved during the New Kingdom. Nefertari's tomb in the Valley of the Queens, with its exquisite painted decorations, represents the pinnacle of New Kingdom funerary art. As the New Kingdom enters its final phase, we witness the gradual erosion of Egyptian power in Asia and increasing pressure from new enemies, the Sea Peoples, mysterious invaders who disrupted civilizations throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. Ramesses III, the last great pharaoh of the period, successfully defended Egypt against these invaders around 1175 BCE, but his victory came at enormous cost that Egypt could not long sustain. The religious developments of the New Kingdom profoundly influenced Egyptian civilization's final centuries. The elevation of Amun-Ra to supreme deity, the elaboration of afterlife beliefs, and the democratization of religious practice created a spiritual framework that would endure even as political power waned. The magnificent temples of Karnak and Luxor, continuously expanded by successive pharaohs, became the religious heart of this transformed Egypt. The Valley of the Kings, where New Kingdom pharaohs were buried in elaborate rock-cut tombs, represents a revolution in royal burial practice. Unlike the highly visible pyramids of earlier periods, these hidden sepulchres were designed to foil tomb robbers through concealment rather than massive construction. The tomb walls, decorated with scenes from the Book of the Dead and other funerary texts, transform each burial chamber into a guide for the pharaoh's journey through the underworld. As we prepare to move beyond the New Kingdom's golden age, let your consciousness rest on the image of Thebes at its height. A city of magnificent temples where daily processions celebrated the pharaoh's divine nature. International delegations brought tribute from across the known world, and skilled craftsmen created works of art that still inspire wonder today. The New Kingdom transformed Egypt from an isolated African kingdom into a cosmopolitan empire whose influence extended across 3 continents, creating a legacy that would inspire rulers and dreamers for millennia to come. As we drift into the twilight of pharaonic Egypt, the centuries following the New Kingdom's collapse present a complex tapestry of decline, foreign rule, and remarkable cultural resilience. The third intermediate period, beginning around 1077 BCE, saw Egypt fragment once again into competing kingdoms. Yet this apparent weakness masks a period of significant cultural and religious development that would influence the ancient world for centuries to come. Picture the Nile Valley during these turbulent times. Libyan dynasties ruling from the delta in the north, Nubian pharaohs controlling the south from their capital at Napata, and native Egyptian dynasties maintaining independence in scattered cities throughout Middle Egypt. This political fragmentation might seem like chaos, but it actually demonstrates the enduring appeal of pharaonic ideology. Even foreign rulers found it necessary to adopt Egyptian royal titles and religious practices to legitimize their authority. The Libyan dynasties of the 22nd and 23rd dynasties, founded around 945 BCE by pharaohs like Shoshenq I, brought new energy to Egyptian culture while maintaining traditional forms. These rulers, descended from Libyan military settlers who had served in Egyptian armies, understood that effective rule required embracing rather than replacing Egyptian traditions. Shoshenq I's military campaigns into Palestine, recorded in both Egyptian temple reliefs and biblical accounts, demonstrate that even a weakened Egypt remained a significant regional power. As you settle deeper into peaceful rest, imagine the great temple complexes during this period, Karnak, Luxor, and countless smaller shrines throughout Egypt, continuing their daily rituals despite political upheaval. The priests who maintained these sacred spaces preserved not only religious traditions, but also the knowledge and skills that made Egyptian civilization distinctive. Temple scriptoriums copied ancient texts, workshops produced religious artwork, and schools trained scribes in hieroglyphic writing that connected contemporary Egypt to its glorious past. The most remarkable foreign rulers of this period were the Nubian pharaohs of the 25th dynasty, who conquered Egypt around 747 BCE and ruled both kingdoms from their capital at Napata, near the fourth cataract of the Nile. These black pharaohs, as they are sometimes called, presented themselves as more authentically Egyptian than their predecessors, emphasizing their role as restorers of ancient traditions that recent dynasties had neglected. Piye, the Nubian conqueror who first unified Egypt under his rule, left a detailed account of his campaigns carved on a stela at his capital. This text reveals a ruler deeply committed to Egyptian religious traditions, who insisted on proper ritual purification before entering temples and criticized his enemies for their impiety toward the gods. Piye's victory was as much religious as military. He presented himself as chosen by Amun to restore proper worship throughout the Nile Valley. The Nubian pharaohs' building projects rivaled those of the New Kingdom in scope and artistic quality. At Gebel Barkal, the sacred mountain near Napata, believed to be the birthplace of Amun, these rulers constructed magnificent temples that combined Egyptian architectural forms with distinctively Nubian elements. Their pyramid tombs at Nuri and Meroe, though smaller than Old Kingdom monuments, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of Egyptian funerary traditions adapted to local conditions. Taharqa, perhaps the greatest of the Nubian pharaohs, ruled from 690 to 664 BCE during a period when Egypt briefly regained international prominence. His military campaigns extended Egyptian influence into the Levant, where he allied with local kingdoms against the growing threat of Assyrian expansion. Taharqa's building projects, from the Delta to Nubia, created a unified artistic style that celebrated both Egyptian tradition and Nubian innovation. Yet, even Taharqa's considerable abilities could not withstand the military might of Assyria, the dominant power in the ancient Near East. The Assyrian invasions of 674 and 671 BCE devastated Egyptian resistance, forcing the Nubian pharaohs to retreat south while Assyrian-appointed governors ruled northern Egypt. These campaigns marked Egypt's first conquest by a Mesopotamian power and foreshadowed the later Persian domination that would end pharaonic independence. The Sate period, representing the 26th dynasty from 664 to 525 BCE, witnessed Egypt's remarkable recovery under native rulers who expelled the Assyrians and restored Egyptian independence. Psamtik I, the dynasty's founder, gradually extended his control throughout Egypt while carefully maintaining diplomatic relations with Assyria's successors. His reign began Egypt's last great flowering as an independent kingdom. The Site pharaohs consciously modeled themselves on old kingdom predecessors, creating what scholars call an archaising movement that idealized Egypt's distant past. Royal sculpture returned to Old Kingdom proportions and stylistic conventions, while temple decorations copied scenes and texts from monuments built 2 millennia earlier. This retrospective orientation reflected both pride in Egyptian heritage and anxiety about cultural survival in an increasingly cosmopolitan ancient world. Site Egypt became remarkably international in its outlook, welcoming Greek merchants and mercenaries who established permanent communities in the delta. The trading city of Naucratis became a Greek enclave where Hellenic culture flourished alongside Egyptian traditions. These cultural exchanges influenced both civilizations. Greek artists adopted Egyptian motifs and techniques, while Egyptian craftsmen incorporated Greek elements into traditional forms. The religious developments of the late period profoundly influenced subsequent Western civilization. The cult of Isis, which had originated as worship of a relatively minor goddess, expanded during this period into a universal religion that would eventually spread throughout the Roman Empire. Isis became the ideal mother and wife, the protector of the dead, and the source of magical knowledge, attracting devotees from across the Mediterranean world. Similarly, the worship of Serapis, a syncretic deity combining aspects of Osiris with Greek religious elements, demonstrated Egypt's ability to adapt its traditions to changing circumstances. The Serapeum at Alexandria, built during the Ptolemaic period, became one of the ancient world's most magnificent temples, attracting pilgrims and scholars from across the known world. The Persian conquest of Egypt in 525 BCE by Cambyses II marked the end of native pharaonic rule for over a century. Yet even under Persian dominion, Egyptian culture proved remarkably resilient. Persian rulers found it necessary to present themselves as legitimate pharaohs, adopting Egyptian royal titulature and supporting temple construction projects. The Persian period, far from destroying Egyptian civilization, actually strengthened certain aspects of Egyptian culture through contact with broader ancient world traditions. Darius I, the greatest Persian ruler to control Egypt, demonstrated remarkable respect for Egyptian traditions. His building projects, including a canal connecting the Nile to the Red Sea, benefited Egyptian commerce while showcasing Persian engineering capabilities. The trilingual inscriptions Darius erected throughout Egypt in hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Aramaic symbolize the multicultural nature of his empire while acknowledging Egypt's distinctive cultural identity. The late period also witnessed significant developments in Egyptian writing and literature. Demotic script, a simplified form of hieroglyphic writing suitable for everyday use, became increasingly common for legal documents, personal correspondence, and literary texts. This democratization of writing paralleled earlier trends in religious practice, making Egyptian culture more accessible to ordinary people while maintaining the prestige of traditional hieroglyphic script for monumental and religious purposes. Egyptian medical and scientific knowledge during the late period influenced Greek learning, and through Greek translations entered the broader ancient world intellectual tradition. The Edwin Smith Papyrus and other medical texts demonstrate sophisticated understanding of anatomy and surgical procedures that informed medical practice throughout the ancient Mediterranean. Similarly, Egyptian astronomical observations, preserved in temple ceiling decorations and papyrus texts, contributed to the development of mathematical astronomy that would flourish in Hellenistic Alexandria. As the late period draws to a close with Alexander the Great's conquest in 332 BCE, we witness not the death of pharaonic Egypt, but its transformation into a cosmopolitan, Hellenistic kingdom. The arrival of Alexander, who was welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule, began Egypt's final chapter as an independent civilization, while creating the foundations for its integration into the broader ancient world. Let your mind rest now on the image of late-period Egypt, a civilization that had learned to adapt and survive through political upheaval, foreign rule, and cultural change while maintaining the essential elements that made it distinctively Egyptian. The pharaohs of this period may have lacked the resources of their New Kingdom predecessors, but they possessed something equally valuable: the wisdom to preserve and transmit a cultural heritage that would inspire and influence civilizations long after the last native pharaoh had passed into memory. As we approach the conclusion of our gentle journey through pharaonic Egypt, we enter the final chapter of one of humanity's longest-lived civilizations. The arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE marked not the end of pharaonic tradition, but its remarkable transformation under the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty that would rule Egypt for nearly 3 centuries, maintaining the forms and rituals of ancient kingship while adapting them to a cosmopolitan Hellenistic world. Picture Alexandria as it rose from the Mediterranean coast under the Ptolemies, a gleaming city of marble columns and broad avenues, where the lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guided ships from across the known world to Egypt's shores. Here, in this magnificent capital, the last pharaohs maintained court in a style that combined pharaonic grandeur with Greek sophistication, creating a unique synthesis that would influence Western civilization for millennia. The Ptolemies understood that ruling Egypt required embracing pharaonic ideology completely. They married their siblings in the pharaonic tradition, presented themselves as living gods to their Egyptian subjects, and supported the ancient temples with generous endowments. Yet they also established Alexandria as the intellectual capital of the ancient world, where the great library and museum attracted scholars, poets, and scientists from across the Mediterranean to study and preserve human knowledge. As your consciousness settles deeper into peaceful rest, imagine the daily life of Ptolemaic Egypt. In Alexandria, Greek-speaking citizens debated philosophy in marble porticos, while Egyptian priests maintained ancient rituals in traditional temples throughout the Nile Valley. This cultural duality created a remarkably dynamic civilization where ancient wisdom coexisted with cutting-edge scholarship, producing innovations in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering that would influence human development for centuries. The most famous of the Ptolemaic rulers was Cleopatra VII, whose reign from 51 to 30 BCE represents both the climax and conclusion of pharaonic Egypt. Contrary to popular misconceptions, Cleopatra was highly educated, fluent in multiple languages including Egyptian, making her the first Ptolemaic ruler in 3 centuries to speak the language of her subjects. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were as much diplomatic strategies as personal liaisons, attempts to preserve Egyptian independence in an age when Roman power dominated the Mediterranean world. Cleopatra's court in Alexandria represented the last flowering of pharaonic magnificence adapted to contemporary circumstances. Ancient sources describe banquets of unprecedented luxury, where the queen appeared dressed as Isis or Aphrodite, emphasizing both her divine nature and her appeal to diverse cultural constituencies. Her famous barge, described by Plutarch as having purple sails, silver oars, and a pavilion, decorated with gold and jewels, symbolized the fusion of ancient Egyptian royal display with Hellenistic artistic sophistication. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian defeated the combined forces of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, marked the end of Ptolemaic rule and Egypt's incorporation into the Roman Empire. Yet even this political transformation could not erase the pharaonic legacy that had shaped Egypt for over 3 millennia. Roman emperors found it necessary to present themselves as pharaohs to their Egyptian subjects, commissioning temples decorated with traditional hieroglyphic inscriptions that proclaimed their divine kingship according to ancient forms. The Temple of Dendor, now in New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art, exemplifies this Roman adaptation of pharaonic tradition. Built by Augustus around 15 BCE, the temple's decoration follows traditional Egyptian artistic conventions while subtly incorporating Roman elements. Augustus appears in pharaonic regalia, offering to Egyptian gods in scenes that would have been familiar to subjects of Khufu or Ramses II, demonstrating the enduring power of pharaonic symbolism. Even as Christianity gradually replaced traditional Egyptian religion during the Roman and Byzantine periods, pharaonic influences persisted in subtle forms. Coptic art and architecture incorporated elements from pharaonic tradition, while Christian hermits established monasteries in ancient Egyptian tombs and temples, creating a continuity of sacred space that connected the new religion to Egypt's ancient spiritual heritage. The decipherment of hieroglyphic writing by Jean-François Champollion in 1822, using the trilingual Rosetta Stone as his key, marked the beginning of modern Egyptology and the rediscovery of pharaonic civilization by the contemporary world. This breakthrough revealed that the mysterious symbols covering Egypt's monuments were not mystical pictograms, but components of a sophisticated writing system that recorded the full complexity of ancient Egyptian thought and culture. Modern archaeological investigations continue to reveal new aspects of pharaonic civilization that challenge and expand our understanding of ancient Egypt. Recent discoveries in the Valley of the Kings, ongoing excavations at Giza, and satellite surveys that reveal previously unknown archaeological sites demonstrate that Egypt's ancient heritage still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Each new discovery adds depth to our appreciation of the remarkable civilization that flourished along the Nile for over 3,000 years. The influence of pharaonic Egypt on subsequent cultures extends far beyond academic scholarship. Egyptian motifs appear in architecture from Washington, D.C. to London. Egyptian revival movements have influenced interior design and decorative arts, and the iconic image of the pharaoh continues to symbolize ancient wisdom and mysterious knowledge in popular culture worldwide. This enduring fascination reflects pharaonic Egypt's success in creating symbols and narratives that speak to universal human concerns about mortality, divinity, and the desire for eternal remembrance. The practical achievements of pharaonic civilization, advances in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and engineering, laid foundations for developments that continue to benefit humanity today. The Edwin Smith surgical papyrus demonstrates medical knowledge that influenced Greek physicians, and, through them, the development of Western medicine. Egyptian mathematical innovations, including decimal notation and geometric principles used in pyramid construction, contributed to the mathematical traditions inherited by Greek scholars and preserved for posterity. The religious innovations of pharaonic Egypt, particularly the development of sophisticated afterlife beliefs and the concept of divine judgment based on moral behavior, profoundly influenced subsequent religious traditions. The weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, depicted in countless tomb paintings and papyrus illustrations, established the concept of posthumous moral judgment that would appear in later religious systems throughout the ancient world. Perhaps most importantly, pharaonic Egypt demonstrated humanity's capacity to create enduring institutions and cultural traditions that could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining essential continuity. The pharaonic system survived foreign conquests, religious transformations, and political upheavals, precisely because it provided flexible frameworks for organizing society while preserving core values that resonated with human experience across cultural boundaries. As our journey through pharaonic Egypt draws to a close, let your mind rest on the timeless image of the pyramids at Giza, standing sentinel over the desert, as they have for nearly 5 millennia. These monuments, along with the countless other achievements of pharaonic civilization, remind us that human creativity and ambition, when guided by spiritual purpose and sustained by collective effort, can create works that transcend their historical moment to become permanent fixtures in human consciousness. The pharaohs dreamed of eternal life, and in a very real sense, they achieved it. Not through the preservation of their physical bodies, but through the enduring power of their monuments, the continuing fascination with their achievements, and the lasting influence of their innovations on human civilization. Their legacy speaks to the eternal human desire to create something lasting, something worthy of remembrance, something that connects our mortal existence to the infinite mysteries of time and space. In the quiet of this moment, as you drift toward peaceful sleep, carry with you the wisdom of ancient Egypt. That greatness lies not in conquering others, but in creating beauty that endures, not in accumulating wealth, but in building institutions that serve future generations, and not in achieving personal immortality, but in contributing to the great human story that connects all of us across the centuries. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt, in their eternal rest, continue to teach us that the most lasting monuments are those built not of stone, but of human achievement, creativity, and the endless quest for understanding our place in the cosmos. Sweet dreams, and may the eternal wisdom of the pharaohs guide you through the peaceful kingdom of sleep, where ancient mysteries await your dreaming mind, and the golden sands of time stretch endlessly toward tomorrow's dawn.